Few fictional characters attract as much certainty and as little historical curiosity as Wonder Woman. Everyone seems to have an opinion about what she represents: feminism, sexuality, power, representation. But just as often, she's dismissed as something else entirely, a hypersexualized fantasy tolerated only because she wears the right symbols and speaks the right language. And it's a compelling argument. It's also largely wrong. Because to understand Wonder Woman, you have to do something unfashionable. You have to step away from modern projection and go back to original intent, to context, to the people who actually created her. Because Wonder Woman wasn't an accident. She was a challenge. Wonder Woman first appeared in 1941, and at that point, comic books were dominated by aggressively masculine ideas of heroism. Strength meant violence, moral clarity came from fists, and emotional restraint was authority. Her creator, William Moulton Marston, he looked at that landscape and wasn't impressed. Marsden wasn't a traditional comic writer. He was a psychologist, a researcher into emotion and behavior, and a vocal critic of what he saw as the moral immaturity of male-centric power fantasies. He believed popular culture was teaching boys the wrong lessons about dominance and barely speaking to girls at all. So he asked a simple but dangerous question. What would a hero look like if strength was measured by compassion rather than conquest? Wonder Woman was his answer. Now, modern criticism often fixates on Wonder Woman's tools, the lasso, the cuffs, the imagery of restraint. And viewed through a contemporary lens, these are often read as sexualized first and symbolic second. But Marsden's own work tells a completely different story. He was deeply involved in early research that contributed to the development of the polygraph. His professional life revolved around truth, emotion, compliance, and moral choice. He believed coercive force was a sign of failure and that violence revealed weakness, and that the future depended on voluntary submission to truth and empathy. Which brings us to the lasso of truth. It isn't a sexualized prop, it's a philosophical device that doesn't harm, doesn't punish, compels honesty without violence. And in Marsden's worldview, that made it more powerful than any weapon. Now, one of the most persistent myths about Wonder Woman is that she represents a solitary male fantasy projected onto a female body. But that idea collapses the moment you look at the household she came from. Marsden lived and worked alongside Elizabeth Holloway Marsden, his wife, an intellectual equal, and Olive Byrne, who was a writer and activist who also lived with them. And both women were directly involved in shaping Wonder Woman's philosophy, her symbolism, and her visual language. Byrne's wide metal bracelets famously inspired Wonder Woman's cuffs, objects that deliberately transform meaning. What once symbolized restraint becomes defiance. What once marked subjugation becomes strength. And this matters because Wonder Woman didn't emerge from male isolation. She emerged from a collaborative, ideologically driven environment centered on female authority and autonomy. That argument that Wonder Woman exists primarily for the male gaze usually rests on one observation alone: she's attractive. But attraction does not equal objectification. The male gaze isn't about beauty, it's about power. It asks who drives the story, who makes the decisions, who acts, and who is merely acted upon. And Wonder Woman answers those questions herself. She's not a prize, she isn't a side quest in a man's narrative. She doesn't exist to soothe male insecurity. She challenges men. She corrects authority. She leads. If she were designed to serve the male gaze, she's really bad at obeying it. But the most revealing reactions to Wonder Woman aren't always hostile. They're unsettled, vaguely discomfort, an inability to quite explain what feels off. And that discomfort comes from her refusal to simplify. She doesn't trade femininity for strength. She doesn't discard empathy to justify power. She does not apologize for being sexual and authoritative. And modern culture often demands that powerful women choose: be strong but not soft, be sexual but not authoritative, be compassionate but not commanding. Wonder Woman refuses every one of those bargains. She insists that love and strength are not opposites, and that compassion doesn't negate authority, that leadership's rooted in empathy isn't a weakness but maturity. And that's a comforting message. It's a confronting message, especially in cultures that still feel unease with male dominance, where they believe they have to ask permission Reducing Wonder Woman to a symbol of the male gaze says less about her and more about the lens we bring to her. She wasn't created to be ogled, she was created to educate. And Marsden wanted boys to see that power without compassion corrodes, and he wanted girls to see that compassion without power is just a lie. He wanted society to confront the possibility that the two were never incompatible at all. Wonder Woman isn't a contradiction, she's a synthesis. And maybe that's why, more than 80 years later, we're still arguing about her. Often loudly, often incorrectly, and often without returning to the evidence that's been there the entire time. If you wish to see a long-form version of this debate about Wonder Woman subjugating the male gaze, the first of a 3-part series is on my Substack account. As always, thank you for joining me on Detective Comments. Be sure to check out Gotham After Dark. And for both Gotham After Dark and this channel, please throw a batarang at that subscribe button and make sure the Joker rings that notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes. See you later.